Class is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning. This is David Goldstein from Mekko Graphics, and thank you for attending our webinar this morning. What I'll be doing for the next half an hour is walking you through different ways you can use Mekko Graphics in Excel. Before we get started, just a couple of things to discuss. One is we will be recording the webinar, and we will send all the attendees and all the people who signed up but are not able to attend. We will send you a link to the recording. We'll send you a copy of this PowerPoint presentation and a copy of the Excel file that we'll be working on today. Second thing is that one of my colleagues will be online or is online as I'm going through the presentation, and they will be available to answer your questions or your chats through the GoToWebinar interface. Lastly, I just want, two other things. One is I will stick around at the end of the webinar, so in about half an hour when I wrap up, and if you've got questions for me, I will be happy to answer them then. Lastly, just as just to check and to set expectations, all of the working with Excel that I'm going to show you today is based on the Windows version of Mekko Graphics. Unfortunately, the Mac version of Mekko Graphics does not have an Excel add-in. So if you're running Windows, this should be a very useful webinar. If you're running a Mac, unfortunately, you won't be able to take advantage of the features that we're going to discuss today. So just as a way of getting going, we're going to talk about several different ways to use Excel to use Mekko Graphics in Excel. First, we're going to show you how to build a chart in Excel and have that chart sit right next to your data and work with an Excel data range. And second, how to take that Excel chart that you made and then move it into PowerPoint. So we've found really a couple of major use cases for Mekko Graphics in Excel. One is creating charts in Excel and leaving them in Excel, making dashboards in Excel, and the second is using Excel as more of a scratch pad so you can see the chart right next to your Excel data, and then once you've got the chart looking good, move the chart to PowerPoint. So I will show you both of those use cases at the start. Then I'm going to show you how to create a chart in Excel and then copy the chart and change the data range. So you'll be able to make multiple copies of the same chart linked to different ranges of data. And then I'm going to show you how to create a chart in PowerPoint based on your Excel data. So do all your work in Excel and make the chart directly in PowerPoint. And lastly, I'm going to show you how to take a chart you've already made in PowerPoint and link it to a range in Excel. So that's the plan. We're going to start with this this more complex chart here. It's a Cascade chart of Microsoft's quarterly revenue and or yearly revenue, and we're going to show you how to make that chart in Excel and eventually move it over to PowerPoint. So let me switch gears, and I'm going to start here just to show you where the data came from. Just a link on the Microsoft site got me their 2018 annual revenue, and I can and the 2017. I can copy this data, which I did, and I just pasted it into this Excel workbook here. So I took this Excel data, I did a few manipulations to it, and I added some formulas because really I wanted to add in my chart, I wanted to have a data row to show year-over-year growth and a data row to show percent of revenue, as you can see in the chart. So I added those calculations here in Excel just with some simple Excel formulas. So start with this data range. And to make a chart in Excel based on this data range, I just go to my Mekko Graphics ribbon in Excel. And then you can see I've got two options on the left-hand side. I can create a chart in Excel based on the selected data range, or I can create a chart in PowerPoint based on the selected data range. In this case, I'm going to create a chart in Excel, and the chart is going to be a cascade. Some people call that a waterfall chart. So I'll just click here. That'll add my cascade chart right to my slide, put it right next to my spreadsheet, put it right next to my data. And here it is. Now the things I need to do now is tell Mekko Graphics which pieces of this data I want to show up on the chart and how I want that data organized. I've got a lot of data here that's not going to appear on the chart. I've got some data here that's going to appear as a data row at the bottom of the chart. But even before I do that, I need to tell Mekko Graphics that this data is not organized in the way Mekko Graphics initially expects the data. When we organize a chart, typically the columns in the spreadsheet correspond to the bars in the chart, and the rows in the spreadsheet correspond to the series which go across the bars in the chart. So in this spreadsheet, the rows correspond to the bars, so we're going to have to tell Mekko Graphics to treat the data as if it were transposed. And we have a button that allows us to do that. That button is up here in the Mekko Graphics ribbon, in the Edit Chart ribbon, and it's this button here called Switch Bars and Series. So once I click this button, now you can see the data was transformed. And while you probably can't read these little labels, all of the rows are now treated as, I'm going to make the chart a little bigger. All of the rows are now treated as bars in the chart. So now I can go into my bars and series dialog and tell Mekko Graphics which bars and which series I want to display on my chart. So I'm going to go into bars and series. I'm going to click on series, and the series that I want to display in my chart are product and services and total. I don't want to display the 2017 results, and I want to display these last two series as data rows at the bottom of the chart. So I click off here, and I click on data rows. And then I say I want my data rows to format to show up as a percentage. And now you can see I've got the data rows at the bottom of the chart. Now I can go to my bars tab and tell Mekko Graphics which bars are going to be total bars on my chart. Those are the bars that go all the way down to the x-axis. So I need gross margin to be a total bar. I need operating income to be a total bar, income before taxes, and net income. And now the chart's starting to look pretty good. It's starting to look similar to the chart that I created and was showing you in PowerPoint. A few other things I need to do, I'd like to do to make the chart look a little better. I wanted to show percentages in revenue. Well, first thing, let me add a legend to the chart so you know what those colors mean. And you can see the legend here. I can move the legend up here. And I just want the legend for service and product and other. So I can right click and say Format Legend. And then I can go to Visibility and I can hide total here. Then I can go to Format Chart. And now I can make my chart look a little better. In the General tab, I can link my segments together like this. In the Sort tab, I can reverse the order of the negative segments. So service is always above product. I can move this a little closer here. In format chart, in the values tab, I can say my bar totals are going to have a $ in front of them and a B for billions behind them. And to make them billions, I need to use the data scaling, which is going to divide all of my data by powers of 10. So if I click 3 times, I'll change my millions of dollars to billions of dollars. And also, if I want to get rid of the negative sign from behind, from my negative numbers, I can go into chart level options and say display negative numbers without the negative sign. And then from here, I can just do, I can go into the general tab and show labels in all of my segments and have those labels contain just a percentage. And if I want, I can then click and hide all these 100%, which are kind of not very useful. Just if I multi-select them all, I can then right-click and hide them all, and they all go away. And if I want to change my coloring to make it look a little nicer, I can click all my total bars here, right-click, and let's make them all gray. And I can click on all of these bars here. And if I want, I can make them all segment color, a little kind of tan. If I want to hide my y-axis, which I did in the chart, I can just right-click and then hide axis. And then I can click on my internal chart margins and make my chart fill more of the chart area by just changing my chart margins like this. One neat little trick on these charts, if I've got a data row and I want the label to appear in one line, I can right-click on the label and check off the auto wrap. And now it's all on one line. And I might want all my fonts to be the same size. They look pretty close to the same size, but some of them are 9 and some of them seem to be 11. I can say Control A, select all my labels, right-click on any of the labels, and let's make them all 9. So now I've got a pretty nice looking chart sitting in Excel right next to my data. And if I want, I can leave it here, like I said. But also, if you'd like, you can take the chart, copy it, cut it, copy it, and if you'd like, paste it into PowerPoint. Chart was a little big here. Resize it. And it'll sit here in PowerPoint. Once you resize, you need to double click and that'll fit it in the new window. Maybe adjust your fonts if you want, or your margins if you want. And now you can see this chart is linked to the range in Excel. So the border on this chart is green, which means the data in the chart match the data in Excel, and the chart is linked to that Excel range. So if the data changes in that Excel range, then the chart will update. If you want this to be a standalone PowerPoint chart, well, you can see the chart data are here as well. The data came over, and they're sitting in the Mekko Graphics data editor. And if you're ever working directly in PowerPoint, the switch bars and series button is sitting right here in the Mekko Graphics data editor. If you want to break that link and make it a standalone standalone PowerPoint chart, just click here and remove the link, and now it's a standalone chart. So that's sort of the quick tour of working in Excel, leaving a chart in Excel, or copying the chart from Excel and pasting it into PowerPoint. So the next thing I wanted to show you is how to work in Excel and make a copy of an existing chart. So here I've got this Cascade chart, and it's based on this data range here. So if I double click on this chart, and I click on the chart data range, you can see the data range from this chart is from A1 to L2. If you'd like, what you can do, sometimes you've made a chart and you really like it, but you want to display it with a different set of data. So you've got a chart that you've done for your European subsidiaries, and you want to use the same data and make the chart for North America. So what you can do is just click off the chart, copy it, Control C, Control V. Now I've got a copy of the chart. I can move it over here next to this other data range, but this chart is still linked to the data range A1 to L2. But now I can just double click on this chart. And if I go back to the Edit Chart ribbon and I click on Change Data Range, I can say I want this chart now to be from the range P1 to AA2. And once I click OK, the chart will update. And now you can see the chart is now based on the new data range, but all the chart formatting stays in place. So the axis break is still here, the bar comparison line is still here, the coloring is still the same. So it's very easy to create a chart and make it look the way you want it to look, and then copy it and paste it in Excel, and then just link it to a different data range. So I thought that was a nice little trick, a nice little way to work both in Excel and you can then copy and paste these charts into PowerPoint if you'd like as well. The third thing I wanted to show you this morning or today is how to create a chart directly in PowerPoint based on some data in Excel. So this data I got from, let me just go back to the web again. So I found this interesting data on the web, one of my favorite sites, Visual Capitalist, had a list of all of the asset managers with $1 trillion or more in assets. And what they pointed out was most of those asset managers were in the United States, and most of them were clustered in the northeast part of the US. So they showed this in this donut chart. I thought that data would show better in a Mekko chart, where I organized the Mekko chart by region, and each of the row would be a different asset manager. And here you could see how Metro New York, Metro Boston, and Metro Philadelphia have most of the large asset managers, a few in the rest of the US, and a few more in the rest of the world, mostly in Europe, and one in Japan. So to make this chart, I started with the data, which Visual Capitalist provided in this nice little table. I copied the data and pasted it right into PowerPoint, right into Excel, like this. I added my own column for location. I just typed these in. There were only 15 of them, so it wasn't very hard. And then I used an Excel formula to extract the number from this asset under management column, which was a set of characters with the dollar signs and the trillions. So I just used a nice little formula and just extracted the number from there. And once I had this data in this little table, I can move it from the table to a pivot table. So the pivot table is nice because it gives me columns for each of my bars in my chart and rows for each of my segments. So I can just highlight the relevant section of the pivot table, just like this, go to Mekko Graphics, say I want to make a chart in PowerPoint. I'll skip Excel totally, and then click on Mekko. Move over to PowerPoint. I'll put a new slide in my deck and click. And now I've got a Mekko Graphics chart in PowerPoint based on that pivot table range from Excel. So now I can format this chart the way I want to format it. Typically in a Mekko chart, I'll go with a narrower set of internal margins like this. I will show labels in my chart. I'm going to show the names and the values in the labels. And I'm going to format my values. I can do that in Format Chart, or I can just right-click and select the values I want to format. So my bar totals, my grand total, and my segment values, I can right-click and say, I want to show these all with 1 decimal place, with a $ in front, and a T for trillions behind. Now from here, I can go into Format Chart and do my sorting. I want to sort this data so the biggest is on the bottom of each bar. So I just click Sort Biggest on Bottom. And I want to use a custom sort for my bars. So I want to set my bars so that New York is my first bar, Boston is my second, Philadelphia the third, followed by rest of US and rest of world. So you can get a sense of how Northeast-centric these large data managers are. And then if you want, you can do some more. You can do some coloring of these segments in my example chart. Here, I colored the segments so that each bar was based on a primary color and used different shades. Very easy to do that in Mekko Graphics. Click on BlackRock. I want to make BlackRock, say, a dark blue. The next one, say, moderate blue, a lighter blue, and a very light blue. And then I can just go through, do the same thing for Metro Boston and Metro Philly. So now I've got a chart here. My chart is created based on this, starting with the data I took from the web, adding some columns, creating a pivot table, and then creating a chart in PowerPoint based on the pivot table. Last thing I wanted to show you was how to create a chart, how to take your data from a chart you've already created and move it to Excel so you can more easily update the data. So here's a chart I created in PowerPoint. I can double click on the chart. I can open the chart data. So basically what I've got is traffic fatalities for the top 35 cities, even though I'm only showing the top 10 in my data set. But I can copy this data from my Mekko Graphics data editor. And then I can go back to Excel, paste the data in Excel. And now I've got a selected range in Excel here. I can go back to Mekko Graphics and say link to Excel and say linked to selected range. So now this chart that I created in PowerPoint is linked to that range that I just selected in Excel. So if I need to update this chart, I can change the data in Excel and then go back to link to Excel and refresh my link. So you can see the border on this chart is green, which means it's now linked to Excel. So those are the steps I wanted to show you, the things I wanted to show you this morning. I wanted to just work through again just the notion of starting in Excel and creating a chart in Excel based on your data, which I did here with the Microsoft income statement, and then copying and pasting that data into PowerPoint if you want, So now I've got a chart in PowerPoint linked to my data in Excel. Then copying a chart in Excel and changing its data range. So now you've got multiple copies, maybe for different divisions or different regions of the same chart. The third was creating a chart in PowerPoint based on data that you've created in Excel. So I went from the web to Excel, added some formulas, created a pivot table, and created a Mekko chart based on that pivot table. And lastly, starting in Excel, creating my chart, starting in PowerPoint, creating my chart in PowerPoint, and then copying and pasting my data back to Excel and linking this PowerPoint chart to that newly created Excel range. So that allows you to more easily maintain your data because you can update the data in Excel and then update the chart in PowerPoint. So lots of different ways you can work with Excel with Mekko Graphics. I think it can add a lot of flexibility in terms of how you display your results, whether you want to display them in Excel or flexibility to your workflow. So starting in Excel, creating charts based on data, and then either creating those charts in PowerPoint or copying and pasting those charts into PowerPoint. So that's what I wanted to show you this morning. Just as a way of wrapping up, and again, I will stick around and answer questions if you've got them. Just as a way of wrapping up, I wanted to share my contact information. If you want to get in touch with me, you're welcome to send me an email, and you will get this presentation later today or tomorrow. I've got my calendar online, so if you want to schedule a one-on-one session, you can click on this link in this presentation and you'll access my calendar, and we can set something up there. Our website has a lot of features that can help you get going. We've got examples of Mekko charts and Cascade charts, which are two of our more popular chart types. We've got a chart gallery, which you can download and work with examples for charts. Aside from these custom webinars, these topic-based webinars, we also have a 90-minute training webinar, which we will run next month and which we have recorded and is available on our website. Plus, we've got a bunch of short videos on our website, which also can be very useful. So how to make a Mekko chart, how to make a Mekko chart, how to work with our preference manager to set up a color palette, all of that's available. And if you need more, we've got our chart of the week, which is my favorite blog. I encourage you to subscribe to it. It'll give you examples of a new chart every week. This pedestrian fidelity chart was the chart of the week within the last few weeks. We also have a Q&A blog, Build Your CQ, your charting quotient. And we also have a link on our website, which you can click to send us an email, ask an expert, and we'll be able to answer your charting questions. So that's it. I want to just wrap up. Thank you for attending, and I will stick around and answer any questions that you have. And thank you again for considering Mekko Graphics or using Mekko Graphics. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you.